Hi there, I'm Todd Malcolm, head coach of NoLimitsTriathlon.com. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can get your bike ready for spring riding. So right now, we're in April, mid-April, and we're in Calgary, and which means that we're all getting excited to ride outside. But we spent the whole winter riding our bikes on our trainer. So we need to do some things to make sure that we're going to be safe. So we need to do some things to make sure our bike is ready to ride outside so that we're going to stay safe on our bike. So I got a list of things here that we're going to do. And what we're going to do is just go through them one at a time. And the first thing you want to do is you want to change your rear tire. So many people have, what's known as a training tire or a trainer tire in the back. So it's kind of made of a thicker rubber. But it's not designed to be ridden outside. And so you're going to have to take that trainer tire and put on a normal tire. What I do is I never use those trainer tires. I just use my old tires from the year before. I just ride on those, which is fine for the trainer, but it's not okay for when you go outside. Because what happens is, because you're just riding in one kind of a plane, so you're not going side to side, the tire actually just wears almost like a square. So if you look at it, you can see that the tire, let me see if I got a tire I can show you. The tire that I have on this bike here is actually brand new. So I'm going to try and see if I can show you on this one how it's kind of a square. If we look at this one, this tire has been on the trainer for a while. I'm not sure if you can see, but it's really quite square here, so it's very, very flat. So I spent a lot of time on the trainer. And so that won't be very good if you go out on a bike ride like that. So you want to have a nice curve to your tire. So having a tire that's been on a trainer all winter and it's been square or flattened on the top is not going to be good. It's not going to help you go around the corners. It will help, it might throw you off a little bit. So make sure you change your rear tire. Your front tire is probably pretty good, but you should also make sure to check both tires to make sure that they're very solid and they don't have any holes in them. So this time of year there's a lot of gravel and a lot of dirt. A lot of times our streets have not been cleaned yet. So if you're going to get a flat tire, this is a great time of year to get it, unfortunately. So make sure you have good rubber on your wheels. The next thing I'd like you to do too is just check your rims. So I want you to just take your tire and just go around and look where the spoke goes into the rim. And you just want to make sure that there aren't any cracks there. This is a habit I got into a couple of years ago, actually maybe 5 years ago, because I used to take off my racing wheels, hang them up, and then put them on the bike. And a couple of years I found that for whatever reason the spoke almost just came out of the rim. It's a very odd thing. But it's just you want to make sure that your rims are not cracked. So that's a simple thing. Just go around and make sure there aren't any cracks in the rim. Okay, the next thing you want to do is you want to check for the correct tire pressure. Sometimes when you're inside, you don't really care about the front tire. So my front tire, let's see if I can push it down with my thumb. See, I can actually push, even though there's some pressure in there, I can take my thumb and push it right down to the rim. So there's not enough pressure in there for sure. The back tire is probably okay because it was on the trainer, but still on this one I can push it down pretty good as well. So you want to make sure you pump it up. And you want to make sure you pump it up to the correct PSI. If you don't know what that is, all tires on the side will tell you where to pump it up. So on this tire here, and I'm going to bring in the camera and try and zoom it in, and all tires will tell you what the maximum pressure is. So on this tire it says right here, it says pressure. It actually has a minimum and a maximum. So the minimum is 103 and then the maximum is 130 PSI. So PSI stands for pounds per square inch. Most tires usually just tell you the maximum. What I like to ride with is usually around 110 to 120 PSI. Probably for springtime riding, I'll probably put it around 100 to 110, not too hard. And so the best way to do that is to get a floor pump. And I'll show you the floor pump I like to use. So I have a floor pump like this. A floor pump is basically a pump that you can put on the floor, and then you can stand with it and really pump up the tires to the correct pressure. It's a lot easier than using a hand pump. And so then I'll pump up the front tire to 110, and then I'll pump up the back to 110 as well. So when you're pumping up your tires, make sure you turn this little guy in the beginning. And if you do have some pressure in there, you want to just do a slight tap to release the pressure, and then you can put the pump on. So now I pumped up the front to 110. Take the pump off. That one didn't work. So what happened is this little guy just blew right off the tube. So can you see that? That little guy there and the tube. It's a very important piece. But it just broke right off. And so the tire tube in here now is no longer any good. Which is, you know what? I'd rather do that now than actually being on the road and then pump it up and it's not going to work. So I know that this tire tube is old. This little locking part is not going to work, so I'll need to put in a brand new tube. So that's a good thing to do. So that's a good thing to know to do it now instead of being out on the road. So what I'm going to do, because I've got a bunch of wheels down here, I'm just going to swap out the front wheel so that we do have a tire so that we do have a wheel that works in the front. Okay, so let's try this again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pump up the front tire, and I have a different wheel in the front, and now we're going to pump it up to 100 psi. Okay, so that's better. So now I have a front tire with a tube that actually works, and I have it pumped up to 100 psi. So now I have a front tire that's ready to go. I'm going to pump up the back tire as well, so it's 100 psi as well. So we're going to have good tire pressure in the back tire and in the front tire as well. What you want to do now is you want to look at your quick release, so the skewers in the front. And so a lot of times when you're riding on a trainer, you don't really care if the front skewer is tight or not, because you're not going anywhere, you're just in one spot. So I don't usually care if the front skewer is super tight. So I'm going to make sure that it's secure. You can just do that by, if you can open up the lever that easy, then it's not tight enough. So I'm going to open it up, just turn this side a couple times, and then I'm going to tighten it up again on the other side. And again, you don't need crazy pressure on it, but you want to make sure that it is firmly secured. So that's good there. And I'll do the same thing with the back. You also want to probably change out your skewer. Most trainers require you to have a trainer skewer like this one. And so this is what I have now on the back of this tire. And this is what I have now on the back of this bike. And so if I'm going to be riding outside for the majority of the time with this bike, I'll swap out this type of skewer, put in the original skewer that came with the wheel. And that's really not hard to do either. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So what I'm going to do now is I need to take the bike off the trainer so I can access the skewer. Just going to move the trainer out of the way. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to loosen up this skewer. I just kind of hold the bike steady with my knees. I open it up, and while holding the screw with my left arm, while holding the screw with my left hand, I unscrew with my right. And I'll take this guy right off. Make sure you keep these little springies. And now I'm going to put on the original skewer that came with the wheel. And so you're going to notice that there are little springs. So we have these little springs that are skinnier on one end and wider on the other. So you always want to make sure that the smaller end goes in first. Then you tighten up this side, and then you keep testing on the left-hand side until there's enough resistance that you're happy with. And that's pretty secure. So then what you'll do too is once you put the skewer back on, you want to spin the wheel to make sure it's centered. So when I spun the wheel, it started hitting my cadence sensor. That means that the wheel isn't centered. So I forgot to do that. So I'm going to back off on the skewer, and I'm going to center the wheel a little bit better. And now I'm going to tighten it back up. So now let's try this again. We're going to spin the wheel. And there we go, it's good. It's a common mistake that happens that when you do change the skewer out and you tighten it back up, that the wheel is not going to be centered. And it's a simple thing by taking off the resistance on the skewer, centering the wheel, and then retightening the skewer, and then your wheel should be good to go. Okay, the next thing you want to check are your brakes. So you want to make sure, first of all, that your brakes are working. Again, when we're riding in the wintertime on trainers, we really don't care about brakes at all. And so when we're going outside, we need to stop. We need to stop, especially if there's cars or hills. If brakes aren't working, you can be in big trouble. So just there's a couple ways you can check them. And just a simple way, you can squeeze the brake. So I'm working here, I'm working on the front brake. So that's the rear. That's the left brake. I'm squeezing that one. I want to make sure that this is squeezing as well. Now the funny thing, interesting thing too, is because on a trainer all winter, I don't need the brakes to work. So I have the brakes quite far from the rim. And so what I'll need to do with this little lever here, I'll make sure the lever is down so that it's going to be closer to the rim. I want to spin the wheel to make sure that the brakes are not rubbing. And then press the brake and make sure it's stopping. So spinning the wheel, squeezing the brake lever, and it's stopping. You also don't want a lot of play in your brakes. So if your lever comes right to this part, if it comes right to the handlebar, that's way too much play. So I like to have it pretty sensitive so that when I press it, it's very responsive. So if your lever is coming right to the handlebar, your brakes are way too far from the rim. So please adjust them so they're closer so that when you press the lever, they're going to stop pretty quick. And the same thing with the back. So let's look at the back here. And you can see that the back is very far away from the rim. Okay, so again, this lever is up. So you're going to need to push the lever down so that it brings the brakes closer to the rim. And I'm going to go back to the front of the bike. I'm going to check and see if these brakes work. I'm spinning the bike here and stopping. But you can see on this bike, you can see in the back how far away those brake pads are from the rim. You can see how far that is? And so because they're so far, that when I press the brake lever down, so let's go to the front here, I press that brake lever, you see it almost comes right to the handlebars. So that's not enough stopping power for me. I'd rather just squeeze the lever to there and then have the brakes tighten right up. So having it to there is way too loose. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to adjust these brakes to bring them closer to the rim, because right now they're too far apart. The next thing you want to look at is your chain. So how clean is your chain? This bike has not been outside since October. So the chain has not been lubed up at all. So what I'll do is, just by looking at it here, I can see it's kind of a little bit grimy and dirty. And so what I'll do is I'll take just a cloth and I'll put some degreaser on it and I'll hold it under the chain and I'll just go quite a few cycles around with it, and that will remove a lot of the dirt and the grime. And then what I'll do is I'll get some bike lube. Let's see, I got some bike lube over here. Then what I'll do is I'll get some bike lube and I'll just add a few drops of bike lube on the chain. And I'll let it sit there for a while, and then I'll spin the chain, take the same cloth, and get rid of the excess oil so that the chain is good to go. Okay, the next thing in the list, what do we got? What you want to do is you want to look at your cables. Okay, so sometimes the cables get frayed. So what I mean by getting frayed is, so you want to look at your derailleur cable there, so you can see the one right there. And that's not frayed at all, so that's pretty good. I wish I had an example of a frayed cable, but unfortunately I don't. But you just want to check your cables, where it goes into the derailleur in the front, the derailleur on the back, and make sure that cable is looking pretty good. Same thing with your brake cables as well, so that when you come up to the brake cable here and you check this cable, you want to make sure that's not falling apart. If it's falling apart, you need to replace that. So again, the cables you want to check are the cables for your derailleurs, the front derailleur and the rear derailleur, and the cables for your brakes, so the front brake and the rear brake. And so you're going to be checking where the brakes go into you're going to be checking where the cable goes into the brake, and actually where the cable is up here as well. So if the cable is poking out, then you're going to need to get that adjusted. When you're riding outside, there's probably, especially in the springtime, there's a high chance you're going to get a flat tire. So you got to make sure that you have a repair kit on board. So I put my repair kit in a small bag like this, and then it just sits behind your saddle like this. So I'm going to go over some things that you need to have in your repair kit. These are some basic things that you should have. You need tire levers. Tire levers are necessary so if you get a flat tire, these tire levers can remove the tire from the rim so you can access the tire tube. So you need the tire levers. If you're someone who likes to get your changes quick, you're going to need CO2. I always travel with CO2, and make sure you have a CO2 adapter, because CO2 will not work without the adapter. Trust me, I've been there, it doesn't work. Okay, so make sure you know how it works as well. Not just having it is a good thing, you need to know how it works. I usually have 2 CO2 for a spare, and the other thing is that you need to have tube. Okay, so you need a tube. So let's just review. Tube, CO2, CO2 adapter, you got your tire levers. I also like to have a patch kit in case you can't, in case you get a hole in this tube, and then you get a hole in this tube, and then if you still get another flat, then what do? Then you take your patch kit and you patch the tube. And you also need a emergency tool. So this tool has a lot of things on it. It has a lot of Allen keys, a screwdriver, a knife, even a chain repair in case you break your chain. Next thing on the list I got for you guys is just to go through your bike and take a little Allen key out, and then just tighten up all your bolts. So make sure your bolts aren't loose. So tighten up your bike cage, tighten up your seat, tighten up your brakes. Just tighten up all the brakes, tighten up all the bolts that you see on your bike. It's a good habit to get into. And last but not least, if you don't want to do this type of maintenance yourself, so if you're not confident or comfortable adjusting your brakes, adjusting your gears, changing your tires out or things like that, then take it to your local bike shop, and then do it early, because this time of year they get super duper busy. So bring it in early and let them tune it up for you. Oh, and I forgot to mention too is your gears. So just take the time to go through the gears and make sure it's shifting properly. And so that you want to make sure that you're able to shift to the small ring in the front, shift to the big ring as well, and go through all the gears. If you find that the bike is skipping or unable to get to some of your favorite gears, then you need to get your bike adjusted. So it's a simple way to taking it to the shop, and they'll adjust the gears. They may even need to adjust some of the cables. So sometimes it's a good thing to take your bike into the shop and let them do a really good once-over on it. It's usually not that expensive to get your bike looked at or a spring tuned up. And I'll tell you what, if you're out there going out for 120 or 100, if you're going out for like an hour or a 3 or 4 hour bike ride, you'll be happy to know that your bike is in good working condition. So that's some of the things you need to do to get your bike ready for spring riding. Hope you guys found this video informative, and make sure you subscribe for more great triathlon videos. Thanks and happy training.